Hello guys. Today I'm going to show you. It's a part of Kubernetes classes, Kubernetes cluster, how to create the cluster in Google Cloud. Now the question is why we are selecting Google Cloud only? Why we are not selecting AWS? So the reason is in the free tier in Google you will get more resources as compared to the AWS. So for example, if you go for AWS Kubernetes cluster creation, you will get one CPU and 1 GB RAM. But in Google Cloud, if you go here, the Google Cloud, the console.cloud.google.com, go to this slide, and then if you have your Google account, you can you can access the Google Cloud through your account, your normal Gmail account. And once you come here, then you will see this the desktop like this, and then you need to create the Kubernetes cluster. So there are two ways. One is the Kubernetes cluster, the GK8 cluster, that is Google Kubernetes cluster, that is controlled by Google. I mean, that's a master is with the Google. And the second option is you can create your own cluster by creating the master and the workers nodes. So if you create the master node and the worker node, then you can create your own Kubernetes cluster. So why I'm saying Google is good, Google is a good option, is that if you create instance, or let's say VM instance or create instance, if you create the instance, click on the create instance first, then you will see something like this. Let's wait for some few seconds. So here you can give the name of the instance. In my case, it's master2, and the region. Those things will explain you what is that in the upcoming sessions. But here, guys, one thing which is really will help you to understand is here you are getting one CPU and 4 GB RAM, or you can say two vCPUs plus 4 GB RAM. But the same thing is not available in the AWS cluster. I mean, AWS, if you have a free tier of AWS, then if you want to create the Kubernetes cluster on top of that, that would be very difficult. So that's the one thing that is highly recommended, and it's very easy, guys. I mean, if you see the Google Cloud, I'm really big fan of AWS Cloud and Azure, but the Google Cloud, it's also very famous, also very very convenient when it comes to uh, the Kubernetes cluster deployment, or deploying a cluster, creating the VMs and those things. That's much easier. So you can create uh, the VMs, two VMs, uh, and then you can create the Kubernetes cluster. But in this video, in the small video, I'm gonna show you how you can create the Kubernetes cluster that is controlled by the Google. I mean the K8 cluster. So for that, you need to uh, once you have an account, everything, uh, then when you come here on the main desktop, you will see a small icon here that is called Activate the Cloud Shell. If you click on the Cloud Shell, then you will come here, and over here you need to first select a check which project in Kubernetes, in the Google Cloud. First you need to create the project. So along with this video, I'm going to share the steps that you need to take to create the projects, then create the clusters, and then manage the clusters, and then create the pods and manage the pods. So let's see. Let's in this small video, I'm going to show you uh, how to create a Kubernetes cluster in less than 5 minutes. So first thing is that when you need to create the project, if you have already created the project, then click here. Um, I have created the project called Kubernetes. You can create the own project. And how to create the project? The command is gcloud config set project, whatever the project ID you want to set. So first you create the project. Once you create the project, then you can set the project ID. Now I have this project as I said earlier, but I'm gonna set this project as my default project. So I'm gonna set g gcloud config set project, copy, paste, and then I need to select my project ID, and this is the project ID. And then this is gonna set my project. So now I'm inside the project. Now what is the next step? The next step is to set the region. The region is something like your in AWS we have different region, right? US East, US West, US East 1, US East 2, something like that. So you need to set the region here, and region, then zone, and then the containers. So first you create the project, then select the region, and then set the region. In my case, I'm setting the region as a US Central 1. And once you set the region, the second step is the zone. You need to select the zone as a US Central 1 dash A. So, I mean, this is something bit different as compared to the AWS thing. But here we are using the AWS, Google Cloud here. So bit different, but I'm really a big fan of AWS, but still I still like Google Cloud a lot. So first thing is you create the project, then set the project, then set the compute region, then zone. Once you set the zone, let's say you have set the zone to US Central dash A, then the second thing is you need to uh, enable the API service. So Google Cloud, G Cloud services, enable container API. So we know that the definition of the Kubernetes is something like that. Just saying your kubectl will talk to your APIs, and APIs will take uh, the configuration of the something, the flow of the the flow of information is something like this, that you have a kubectl. That kubectl will talk to the API. API will talk to the schedulers, and the schedulers also will until it talk to the kubelets, and then kubelets will ultimately get into the pods, and then pods will execute the job uh, and run the services. So that's a typical. We'll talk about those things in my next video. But I just want to in this video I just want to focus on how Google Cloud will help you to create uh, your first cluster. Give a shot, give it a try. The guys is very easy. So once you create the API, the container, the APIs, and then you can create the container registry. So these are the basic requirements for that, for your Google Cloud, Kubernetes services, because here we are not creating any VM. Remember, guys. So we are just accessing or utilizing the Google's Kubernetes infrastructure, right? So it's just to enable those things. So if you see this thing, we are not deploying, we are not creating Ubuntu system, and then we are not installing any kubelet, kubectl, those daemons. It's just we're creating. So gcloud is the command. Gcloud container cluster, uh, creating a cluster. Now in this step we are creating a cluster. So in this way, if I say cluster, hello cluster, uh, let's see if I already created the cluster, I believe. Okay, so we can select any new name. uh, let's select cluster underscore new. So this one will create the new cluster. We have some issues here. Let's see, let's figure out what is that. And first, let's do one thing. Let's delete the cluster. Then we'll create the new cluster. I have created one cluster long back, but let's delete that cluster and then recreate the new one. So that will help. So yes, sorry. Yep. So it is deleting the cluster. Let's wait for some time. It will get deleted. So our next step will be to you delete the cluster, then you create the cluster, gcloud container clusters create any name you can give, and the number of nodes will be 2. But you're not going to create any nodes, but you're just mentioning those nodes here. Then gcloud container cluster get credential. They will get the credential for these cluster, and then you can execute these commands to kubectl version short kubectl nodes and those stuff. Let's see where we are. Is it deleted or still working? So I'll pause this video, and then once it get finished, then we'll resume it. Okay. Yes, guys. Now the cluster has been deleted. Now let's see how to create the new cluster. So cluster creation is very easy uh, in gcloud, in Kubernetes. The command is gcloud container clusters create hello cluster, and number of nodes would be 2. So uh, let me execute it, and let's see how it goes. So it's saying yes, cluster is being created. It will take some time to create the cluster. And then let's see the how what are the next command. You guys, only 5, 6 to 7 commands are there total to create the cluster. It's very easy. And my next video will be on how to manage your applications, how do you deploy the applications. Those things will be there. So stay tuned. And if you want to join uh, the training, then you're most welcome. You can contact me on my uh, the the contact number. I have already given the contact number in the subject line. You can contact me, and we'll create this video. I mean, just create this cluster. So now this is getting created. It will take some time. So once we create the cluster, then uh, you can get the kubectl get pods. You can get the namespace, get the nodes. Nodes will tell you whether how many nodes are there. And in this case, we are getting 2 nodes. One is a master, one is a worker node. And then you can create the kubectl get namespace, and then kubectl get pods namespace kubectl. So we'll talk about the more details in our next lecture, which is specifically on the namespace and pods. We'll understand what you mean by pods, how we manage the pods as a label, um, along with the namespace. What do you mean by namespace? Those things we'll do that. So first, in this small video, I'm gonna explain you, and I wanted to show you basically uh, how we create the cluster. It's very simple. You just follow these things, and this will create the cluster. So this video is only for creating cluster. Next video we'll go get into the details uh, about the kubectl, these commands, kubectl, kubeadm, why we are using these commands, and how these commands are interacting with each other. And along with that, we will learn about the YAML file. What do you mean by the YAML file? How YAML files are the new deployment mantra for Kubernetes. So we'll see that. We'll talk more about that. And for this video, this is the only one. Thank you guys. Take care. And if you want to contact me, you can contact me on this is my number and you can contact me. Thank you guys. I will come up with the new videos for entire Kubernetes cluster practice where you can learn the Kubernetes. But if you want to get into the details, if you want to go into the projects for Kubernetes deployment, then please contact me. We'll have a training for that.